in our neighborhoods. This is a big issue. A recently retired Department of Justice Senior Special Agent Bobby Kimbrough Jr. spent 30 years in law enforcement, and today he's giving us some of his experience. He's going to help us with some good advice. He's written a book called Surviving the Stop, and he is our guest. Bobby, thank you for joining us live from Seattle.
Thank you for having me.
Let me ask you right off the bat, this is the big news story of the day coming out of Baltimore. I want to play this soundbite. It is making America nervous because we're thinking there is a systematic problem of racism in law enforcement. Listen.
Out of the data we surveyed, the police department made roughly 44% of its stops in two small, predominantly African-American districts that contain only 11% of the city's population. African Americans accounted for 95% of the 410 individuals the police department stopped at least 10 times. Indeed, one African American man was stopped 30 times in less than 4 years, with none of the stops resulting in a citation or a criminal charge.
So I'm going to ask of you, Bobby Kimbrough Jr., is there a systematic problem in our law enforcement? Is this an isolated incident? Are the numbers skewed? From your experience, can you give us some insight? Because as Americans, we just are left with our mouths agape going, what's going on?
Yes, what you were listening to was some of the findings that the DOJ had issued in its investigation in the Baltimore Police Department. I look at that, the findings is giving a chance for the community to get closer to the police department, for the police department to fix some of the issues that were found, because the integrity of the police department has been questioned based on some of the findings. When we talk about systematic problems within a police department, I think what happens is that we forget sometimes that we have police officers who work as a part of a system, law enforcement. And when we find issues within individuals, that doesn't mean that the whole department is bad. It just means that those individuals have stepped outside of their scope and what they were hired to do, serve and protect. And then so is what you found in some of the findings in the Baltimore Police Department.
Okay, now there are some questions, though, when I look at something like this. It just seems like it's a department that's out of control, but I don't think we're giving any responsibility to the communities at all, where we say, wait a minute, in some instances we've kind of created this counter police culture, this culture that lifts up crime as though it's a badge of honor. There are some problems within some of our communities. Black communities can be part of this, other communities as well within America, where we have lost a lot of dignity and respect that we used to have as individuals in our nation.
You hit it on the head, Michelle. You're saying we. Because see, what happens is when you talk about policing and you and I could see the exact same event and have different opinions. People only respond to base what they're exposed to, what they understand, and what they've been accustomed to. So when you talk about police officers or the communities in which we serve, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, the community bears some responsibility and the police bear some responsibility. Because what happens is when we paint a group of people or a certain area as crime infested, then we start to respond to that community or that group of people a certain way. And everybody in that community or everybody that's related to that group or that particular group of people are not criminal. That would be like saying that everyone in the hospital is sick. There are some people visiting. There are some people that work there. So in the findings, what they were saying, you had innocent people being stopped, frisked with no probable cause. Now, I get it when you say the community bears. We all bear something with this because all of us bring to the table a certain degree of biasness, all of us as human beings. But what the problem is, we've got to start having real conversations in our communities, real conversations with the police department, and ongoing training with the police departments as well as the communities. If you think about every segment of our society, there's a certain etiquette that is that's required or expected of you. If you would go to the movies, they expect silence. If you would go to church, there's certain decorum. If you go anywhere in our society, there's an expectation. And the same thing has to be in law enforcement. When you come in contact with the police, whether you feel they're wrong or right, on the side of the road is not the place to resolve it. But on the same hand, the police department bears some responsibilities and always remaining above the board.
And for the most part, I have to say, we now get the advantage of police cameras. You see people bad-mouthing the police, bad attitudes, making bad decisions, and you still see these officers treating these individuals like they're people, like calling them sir and trying to be respectful. And you do see an awful lot of that. That's downplayed a little bit as of late because it's not as titillating as some of the other things that the media has been reporting on. But we do have a responsibility. Bobby, I've told this story before. I recently got pulled over. And I have in my car, all of my windows are tinted. And I saw, as I was looking in the rearview mirror, the officer get out. And suddenly, I was taken back by the look of concern and worry on his face and how his hand was kind of close to his hip. I had never seen that before. Yes, I've gotten pulled over before. I try to be a good girl, but it happens. And as I was looking at his face, that was one of the first times, because it was recently, that I saw such concern. I instantly told the kids in the car, everyone roll down your windows and put your hands out of the car. And as he walked up, I said, officer, our windows are tinted. Just wanted to let you know there are no weapons in the car. And, there's three of us here. And I saw this look of relief come over his face, and he didn't even give me a ticket.
And, you hit it on the head. This culture that we have embarked on, this atmosphere that we have created, where the police are on a heightened awareness, where the community has a distrust for the police, where we're trying to figure out who's bad, who's wrong, us against them. And that's the problem. 30 years ago, when I began my career, my training officer gave me some of the best advice I've ever had. He said, when you check 1041 beginning your shift and you pin that badge on you, you don't represent white, you don't represent black, you represent what is right, what is fair, and what is just. And the moment you exit out of those atmospheres, you have created a problem. You have tarnished the shield in which you carry. So we, as citizens, as law enforcement professionals, we've got to engage in real conversation in our communities. We've got to engage in real conversation as it relates to the training, diversity training, because you know what? That's what makes America great, the differences that we bring to the table.
Right on. Absolutely. Your book is called Surviving the Stop. It is a book for this age and for this issue. The byline is change the atmosphere, change the outcome. What is one thing that you would like for me and my listener friend to keep in mind today, Bobby, that can start us on that change for the future?
One thing that I would like to report with the listeners is self-examination. What role do I play in this divide that is created? And what role can I play in bringing us back together? Because, self-examination is a hard thing. All of us got to look at ourselves and say, you know what? We've got to change the atmosphere, each and every one of us. Because, the saying says, united we stand, divided we fall. And not only do we fall, we fail as citizens, as human beings. And we're better than that. In the 21st century, we're sending a man to the moon, a space shuttle, drones, Skyping, and we're still dealing with Neanderthal mentality of racism and biasness.
Oh, yes, very well put. And I would say one of the things that I want to commit to today is praying for our law enforcement. That's one thing I definitely want to do. Bobby Kimbrough, Jr., his book is Surviving the Stop. Thank you so much for being part of Live from Seattle today. Great guest. Department of Justice Senior Specialist. He's been 30 years in law enforcement, and he has some good things to say. I'd pick up that book, Surviving the Stop.